Hello, hello, LaWanna Bradford here. Welcome to another edition of Power of the Pen. I am coming at you from a hotel room in Tucson, Arizona. So I apologize if the lighting isn't ideal, but I'm just really excited to be back with you for another special edition of Power of the Pen. And for those of you that are joining us for the very first time, Power of the Pen is a platform designed to celebrate women authors and their books and to provide us an opportunity to have a discussion on their central message and how these messages have been woven in such a way to create impact and influence. And today we're going to talk about telling your story and creating profits. And no matter what genre that you are writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction and everything in between, um, it comes to life even more so when you're able to tap into a story to create connection, a story to create relatability, a story to help really connect the dots so that people can better understand the journey that you are taking them on. Because as an author, we have a responsibility in that written word. And that responsibility is how we're showing up in this creative way to, we're doing it for some reason, right? We are telling this story for some reason, whether it's to educate, inform, entertain, inspire, uplift. And often we are seeing that we want to write a book, right? We want to have that check mark that I'm an author. But why is it so important that your story be told? And when you have that story and you're overlaying that story in a certain lane, so I'll give you an example. Deborah Morrison is a renowned author, international speaker. She is also a retired certified financial planner. So her zone of genius and expertise is in the financial arena. And in her navigation through life, we all know what happened in the US with 9/11. Well, she was in New York and was given the opportunity to showcase her talents in working with families who had lost loved ones due to the 9/11 attack. Well, in doing so, that opened up another gateway for her to take her talent as a skilled financial expert and intersected with a story which was converted into a book. And this book is to help widows navigate this new normal and to do so in a way that still leaves them financially and emotionally whole. And I share that little piece with you that sometimes in our lives we're ever evolving, right? And every person has a rich story, an experience that can be shared with others. And sometimes you may not know how that experience can be shared. So this is an example of how Deborah Morrison was able to take this experience, translate it into book form, where she weaves in different stories of financial challenges that people face when they're hit with the unexpected, when they're hit with the unfortunate death in their lives. And with that story, she is able to not only educate and inform, but also to give hope and inspiration that even in life's dark moments, because she's also a certified grief counselor. So now you see the intersect of two disciplines, grief counseling, financial expert, and this experience that she had in 9/11, which gave thought and birth to this book that can now help people around the world. Because as we live, life is going to happen. And what do we do when that life happens? Well, with you who are out there listening, whether live or the replay, and you have your book, what is that story? What is that underlying fiber, that underlying thread that you want to ensure connects with that audience in a way that creates impact and influence, in a way that may inspire or educate or elevate? What is it that you want to get across? Why is it so important? And when you understand that, and you've heard Barbara Beckley and I mention on this platform on several occasions, that when you understand the strategic construct of your story, then you're able to splinter it into different ways that are revenue generating ways and opportunities for yourself. I want to share with you another person who I've met recently. Actually, it's been about 2 years ago, and his name is Barry B. Mixon, who is a uh, he is a gemological storyteller. He is a gemologist. So again, taking the science of gemstones and understanding their origin, and then weaving it into a historical perspective, he now translates that into many stories that women and men can then identify with, create this relatability, and through that relatability can make changes and shifts in their lives. Because sometimes it takes a story from a different perspective, couched in a very unique way, to create those aha moments for us, right? For ourselves. And I'll give an example. Barry B. Mixon, he has a show on E360 TV called Gem Hunter Stories. And again, that's where he's taking his knowledge and the scientific expertise of gems, translating that, marrying it with history, and translating it in a way that the viewer can understand. The viewer can create relationship with him as the educator. But Barry is also an author, and he works tirelessly on helping people understand the importance of your story. So whether it's the spoken word that you're sharing with friends, family, other people who need to be inspired and elevated by your story, or you choose to step up and have the written word that is now bound and published, everyone, he believes, value is even more amplified in the eyes of others when people can understand why, when people can understand your impact and how be perceived at a certain level. And so people, we're talking about relatability as authors, it's understanding and creating that bridge of communication, that bridge of understanding more person, Barry B. Lanes of discipline have woven it into an artful art of storytelling. Both are celebrated authors and are now through that are able to reach and impact more lives, right? Because we all have the same 24 hours in a day. We can't be everywhere at once. But guess what? Our books can. Whether our books are virtual or books are in bookstores and people are getting the hard copies, individuals who they do not know, who I do not know, and they're being impacted and influenced by that. Their lives are being shaped and changed in ways that we will never know and never understand. And that's why it's so important that if you have a story and if you have the desire to done that, who can guide you in how to get your story published. Again, whether you want it to be digital, maybe you just want to, maybe you want to go into blogging. And blogs are those mini stories, right? Those mini stories that we're sharing with the world. So there's a lot of avenues that we can get our messages out there. Again, the spoken word. We had Hank Stewart here on our show, who is a poet laureate. and he has spoken for some of the some of the largest audiences in this country, to include dignitaries, sharing his spoken word, sharing his art of communication in a spoken word poetic form. And he is also a celebrated author as well. So I want all of you listening to sit back and think, I've journeyed through my life this far. I've accumulated all of these experiences. There are so many lessons that I've learned through life. Now, how can I tell my story in a way that will help someone navigate through life easier? Maybe they will learn from my lessons and not go through all the bumps and bruises. Maybe I can help inspire someone who's going through a dark and very difficult time, and my story will help uplift. Think about the stories that you have and ask yourself, are you, so that it's not just in your small sphere of influence, but you can reach out and touch the world in a big and broader way. Welcome back, everyone. Co-host is in the house. Barbara Beckley here, best-selling author extraordinaire, business partner, and friend. And I'm so glad that she joined us. And we are talking about telling your story and creating profits. And Barbara was backstage, and we were talking about just two examples and gemologists, how they've taken their expertise in their respective lanes, added life experiences, woven them in these stories, become authors where they are creating impact, influence, and we're going to get to the part two in a little bit, and income by telling their stories. I'm going to turn it over to you, Barbara, to add anything that you want about the importance of telling the story, because I know that is something that you talk about when it comes to what you call your PPD, understanding your purpose, your passion, and your drive.
Yeah, I mean, you did everything so brilliantly. What I was listening to, you were saying a lot of good things regarding telling a story. And two great examples, Deborah Morris and Barry B. Mixon. But the biggest thing I always say too is everybody remembers a story. That's one of the reasons, I mean, I filter in when I speak, and I know others do, and you do too, LaWanna, is people are going to remember a story. One thing about it, if a story is interesting, I have to say that, because you can say some stories, it might not be so interesting. You'd be like, okay. But even with the ones that's not interesting, the ones that's like, you can still remember those too, because there's certain aspects that's still going to pop out in your mind. And you want that to happen with the people that you're talking to, be it as your potential clients, audience, or whoever that's listening to you. Because when the story, they're going to either, they're going to tell a person, they're going to remember it, and they're going to take action. So somewhere around that story, that's going to help you move them and guide them to the next level, in which I know the one that we're going to talk about is basically creating the profit after that.
And I love what you just said, and because I didn't mention that when I was giving my very long intro, is that your story is memorable. So you think about it when you're reading a book, right? What you walk away with is that plot. That's why we talk about that storyline, right? What is the big so what factor? You just read, Moby Dick. Okay, what was the essence of that? What was the true story?
Mhm.
Was it really just about a big fish? Or was it or was there or was there something deeper in that? And that's as us as authors, you know, is it just because I want to put words on a paper and pat myself on the back and say, look, I'm an author, and that's okay. We're not knocking that. But we're talking about selling your story from an impact standpoint, like Barbara said, when it becomes memorable, when people walk away and it's like, okay, I just read this book. You know, I read Barbara's story, and what's the wow factor that you got out of it?
Mhm.
Well, if you read Barbara's story, the one thing you know is why the diamond is so important to her, what it symbolizes. It's not about diamonds per se, but it's what they symbolize in her life's journey, right, Barbara?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll say the other way with you and your story when it comes to finances. I mean, every time I hear your story, LaWanna, I always remember 2008 when you talk about that and how basically you went from to the point, and believe me, people, you need to hear LaWanna's story when it comes to the point where she couldn't even get, her bank account, and she had a basically the bank was like, nope, we don't want you, because she got to that point in her level in life financially, and she had to say, okay, I'm down here. The only way looking is up now. I mean, when you think about it, when you're so low and low, you got to look up and say, that's the only way I can see because I'm already down here. And I remember that story over and over again. That's why she's so passionate when it comes to finances and making everybody understand how important it is to have that, what you're doing in your life, especially as women, and we're getting older and we have to make sure that we're set and not have to be in that position that she went through.
Yeah. And there are times when we don't, when we're going through our life journey, we don't, we may not understand why until we look back. Sometimes we may not ever really understand why, but we can see the little breadcrumbs and how it leads us to the next step. So, as Barbara said, with my passion with finances, I've always been in the financial, allows me now to take that story, and Barbara and I, we do financial wellness boot camps. So that goes into, creating profit centers, creating opportunities for customer engagement. It gives me a platform to create more credibility and understanding of been there, done there, got, like Barbara said, there's no, you can't get any any lower. And to pull myself back up. But there is a process in that. There were, as I say, success leaves clues. So I looked at those people who've been before me who were able to rebuild, took those same principles, applied it, which allowed me to rebuild. And again, it's taking this story, which I've included in many of my writings, but now I'm using it from a business standpoint to create better client engagement and relatability, right? Because you don't want to come from the standpoint to say, well, look at me. I'm now here now. I'm here now. I'm all good. It's like, no, I get it. I get it. And I think that's real important when, especially when we're looking at, and Barbara, I want to turn this over to you, when we're looking at taking that story and now taking the stage,
Yes.
whether it's the on radio, podcast, social media, or actually a physical stage speaking to others, Barbara.
Yeah. And the one thing, you have your story, but I always say if you're not going to put some type of learning or takeaway or objectives to it, like LaWanna said, then it's just a story. It's really just a story. You're just saying something. And usually when you're telling something, there's some aspect of it where there's a learning or something that people can take and say, oh, okay, I see those breadcrumbs that you took, LaWanna. I see what the levels that you had to take to get to the point where you're at now. I always say put the bridge out there. I always say take the bridge where you were before, and then now after you went through all these steps, now this is where I am, and you could do it too. So basically, they're looking for that bridge.
Yeah, exactly. And let's talk about scale. So you created the, and I'm gonna bounce it back to you, Barbara. So you created that bridge, right? You're on the stage, you've spoken a podcast, You've created awareness of who you are, your credibility, your story. Now what, Barbara?
So now what? So now the now what is, as we always say, okay, why did you even tell me this story? We always say, what's the why, right? Why are you telling me that you were bullied when you were 7 to 8 years old? Why? We all been bullied. I've been bullied. We all, somewhere down the line, somebody talked about me, right? I mean, people could say that to you. But the thing is, what did you learn, the aspects from it to get you to that next level? What did you take? I always say, what's that secret sauce that basically is going to get people to say, oh, okay, I need that. Or, oh, I'm struggling in that area. And I see that you came out of that and you use these tactics to do it. So that's why it's so important to just not just tell the story, but you have to say how you got out of it, went around it, went over it, whatever happened to it, to make sure that people understand that's what I'm buying. It's what people are really wanting to buy. Is the story gets them to be relatable to what you're doing. The tactics and what you learned from it is the profit part of it, because that's what they want to get so they can move forward in what they need to do.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that Barbara and I was going to start this month, but we believe next month will work out for us, where we do free mini master classes on this. We take a deep dive, and you've seen us throughout the summer giving little mini snippets of that. But this is a training designed for authors to help you understand your why, create visibility, create impact, create influence, and now the fifth component, creating income. And so we're going to have several of these minis, which will ultimately lead to the masterclass. So the minis are no cost. The masterclass is a cost. So now we're talking about how are we creating profit opportunities? Again, it's taking proven lessons, proven strategies for that author, and sharing with you meaningful material in these free sessions. Because last thing you want is to invest your time in something. It's like, okay, I sat there for an hour or 2 hours. I heard what they said, but no one told me exactly how to do it. I don't know about you, but Barbara, isn't that frustrating?
Very.
They tell you what, but it's like, but I don't know how. Well, we're going to give you the how in these little sessions. But when we go into the actual master class, now that's you crafting your strategy for engagement, your strategy for influence, your strategy for impact, your strategy that will ultimately get you the income that you need. Because most authors go in thinking, I'm going to sell a gazillion books. You very may be, a huge New York best-selling author. It's possible. And I'm not even going to say but. I'm going to say, however, you want to have a plan that has different lanes. If you are looking for it to be an income stream, different lanes to create that income, different ways to be so impactful when you're interviewed that you're invited back again, different ways that you can create awareness that when you're on certain platforms and you know that a conference is coming up, you're not chasing the conference promoters. They're chasing you because they've seen and they've heard your message over and over again on different platforms. They're like, whoa, I need that person as part of our lineup. Then you can start negotiating what your speaking fee is. But you start from somewhere and then you build up. And there's different stages of that, Barbara.
Yeah. So, the one thing is to going back to knowing the why and understand the whole objective of what you're saying. This is where I always tell people, make sure your story is aligned to that. Because I've seen where people say a story and then they say, okay, now I want to tell you, the traits of this. And I'm like, but the story was totally opposite of what was just being said. So you want to make sure it all blends together. like some people just like throwing a story to something, and I'm like, no, there's a whole, like LaWanna said, a strategic way of doing that, and that's so they can remember, be relatable, always remember those two things, and then from that point, add those objectives, add those those what's that we're saying to the how, because it all builds up to that creating that profit. That's what you have to look at. The whole thing is gearing them towards you, either you speaking on stage, you being on a podcast, you buying their services, you buying their product. It all going to relate to that point.
Yeah, I remember this was probably 15 years ago. I was invited to speak on a stage. And so my two lanes of expertise are finance, from financial analysis, and strategy, strategic planning. I think strategic planning is my gifting and professional certification, and then financially as well. But I would say I like strategy first, finance second. But I was called to go and speak to a group of small business owners and to talk about strategy. And I felt really good after the session. I felt really good. So I spoke to the person who was over the event. I said, "What did you think?" They said, "Well, it was really great if you had been speaking to an audience of strategic experts, but you were speaking to small business owners. You were using terminology that was technical. And it was, again, they said, we're not great information, but you didn't create relatability. There was no stories. It was just all textbook. And then you do this, and then you do this. And have you done your environmental scan? And, and it was great. But he said, but did you notice?" And, I sat there and at first I got a little offended, Barbara. I thought, wait a minute, I'm the expert. Yeah, but sometimes we get so caught up in our level of expertise that it gets in our way of connections. And that connection comes from the stories. So if I had taken my story of when I was first in business and some of the hurdles I went through and how I used strategy to help us navigate, that would have created more engagement. If I had asked for audience participation, right? But no, I was just standing in my own expertise and look at me and hear all the great things that I'm spousing out off to everyone, but lost the connection. And it's really hard to, let me do to you before, right? So you always want to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Tell them what you just told them. So I'm setting up expectation. So I'm giving you the story. Then I tell them the story. And then it's like, that so what is that last piece? So a stage that we forget about the audience who we're supposed to be most accountable to. Barbara.
Yeah, I was smiling and laughing at the same time, not at you, but what you were saying about how they said, well, yeah, this would have been good for that, because I'm in the insurance industry too. And I have to make sure when they're not knowledgeable, they're stupid, It's just that they're not in that arena. They don't know the lingo, like you said. There's a lingo to the finance industry. There's a lingo to the insurance. There's a lingo to the medical, So you have to make sure that when you're talking to somebody, just anybody, you have to bring it so they understand. I know one thing I used to get caught up with is I used to always say, oh, you need GL and you need PD. And they're like, Barbara, what is that? What are you talking about? What's GL? is it good legendary? What? I said, no. I said, oops, and that's general liability. So I had to break it down to say that more so than saying, what I'm used to, because those are acronyms that we use in the insurance industry. So that's why you have to know, like LaWanna said, you got to know your audience. Now, if I was in front of an audience of a whole bunch of insurance and brokers, I could say it all day and all night, certain acronyms, because they probably know, they know that.
And speaking about knowing your audience, so let's say you've written a book, and your book is, let's say it's about overcoming, and if I say, well, who is your book for, and you say all women, really? Is your book really for all women? Because what if your book is about overcoming divorce? Is it really for all women? Maybe someone that has never been married, never intends to be married, or has a lifelong partner and never will get divorced. Is it really for all women? Sometimes you can take your story. I apologize. I think I'm losing my voice.
Okay.
You can take that story that may not relate to everyone, but you can come from a point of relatability. So, like that example that you gave, Barbara, where she's talking about children, maybe everyone in the audience doesn't have children, but everyone in the audience knows someone with a child. So then you switch the story maybe from that, like, let's talk about our friends with children. How many of you have friends? Raise your hand. How many of you have friends with children? Raise your hand. Okay, now that's all of us. Now let's talk.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's good. Like LaWanna did it beautifully. You just setting the stage, setting the room for yourself to say, okay, who do you have an audience? Because sometimes you might not know your audience when you speak. There's a lot of times I spoke and I didn't know exactly what the audience was about. I knew it was, professionals, but I didn't know it was gonna be all women, whatever. So that's good to set that stage for you. So now you know where to go next to say, okay, now that I know, the relationship here, the connection, I can now speak to, the individuals as may. But when you just automatically say, I know all of you have children in this room. Like, whoa. It's like,
no, we don't.
I don't have any children. So I'll just stay to the side while you're talking. It's like I want to say, okay, let me just maybe move out to the back somewhere until you get done speaking. You don't want that disengagement. Yeah.
Yeah. When you were saying that, I was thinking about, and I share this little story all the time. I was so excited. I have on the finance side in my business, I have a mortgage company, commercial investment mortgage company. Got an offer to speak on a national radio show. Yay! National radio show is based was based out of Las Vegas. In this particular episode was for the the Nevada area. Somehow I didn't hear that when she told me. I'm just hearing, yay, national radio show. But in her, that was her way of saying, but most of the audience is in the state of Nevada. Mm-hmm. And so I went there and I'm doing my interview. It was great. It was wonderful. But guess what? When we're talking about profits, I can't do loans. I'm not licensed to do loans in the state of Nevada. So it was a great opportunity. Had a great conversation with the host. I gave some information to the audience that they can use when they go talk to someone else who can do loans for them. But there was the profit. There wasn't a cycle coming back to me. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, again, you have to understand when you're on stage is why you're getting up there. Mm-hmm. Is it to create awareness? Is it to create impact, influence, or income? Or is it the fifth component, an opportunity for you to practice your story? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes it is about it. We're able to craft it in a way that creates that impact. Not becoming robotic, but just where you become very fluid and very comfortable. Because believe it or not, one of the greatest fears is the fear of speaking. Yeah. So how do you get over that fear? Or how do you minimize it? It's by practicing over and over again, especially when it comes to telling a story that exposes fear. It's not the easiest thing to do. No. But when you practice, then you become a little bit more comfortable in that seat, because no one has your story but you. No one knows what your journey is but you until you open your mouth and share it, whether it's in the written word or spoken word. Barbara.
Yeah, and I just want to just to add real quickly because of I know because of time is that make sure when you tell your story, be it like you said on stage or podcast or whatever, it's okay to ask the questions. And I think we talked about this before. If this is going to be a good stage for you or a good stage for them, and the reason why I'm saying just the other day I passed up a chance. Well, I'm not gonna say a chance because it wasn't for me. I'm just gonna be honest. But there was in person. It was going to be a conference next year. It was going to be in Miami, Florida. And I started asking questions. Now, a long time ago, the old Barbara, and this person came to me and said, "Oh, we see that you're doing this and this. We would like for you to be on stage." And I'm like, the old Barbara, like, "Oh my God, they reached out to me. They want me to come in person. They want me to speak. Oh my, they see me. They see me." And then, but the new Barbara is like, "Okay, let me ask you some questions." What's the theme of it? What's your audience? How many people have you been doing this? Will I be able to set a vendor booth? Can I talk to people? I mean, in the list, the questions went on. And all those questions, when they started answering them, kind of told me, oh, plus I found it was a pay to play. So with all that, okay, now I got to get my money back from that, plus the profit that I want to get from what I'm doing. So after all those questions were answered, I had to basically say, you know what, thank you for looking at saying that I would be one of the persons to speak, but I'm going to have to decline. And I would have been spending more money out of my pocket than probably getting. So it's just, you have to look at that whole scenario as well. So I just wanted to remind people, it's okay, please ask those questions, because it's very important. Even if your story is amazing and wonderful and you have the ingredients to help people profit wise, the platform might not be the one for you.
I love that. And we're going to come back to that. We have about 5 more minutes before the show's over, but I want to, if you're thinking about, wow, Power of the Pen, I didn't know that you existed. How can I be on it? Well, Power of the Pen airs every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on East 360 TV. We also are on Roku, Apple, and Samsung TV, and we stream on Facebook. And it is a way to get your story, your book, your message out to millions around the world. And we're looking for great authors just like yourself. We'd love to have a conversation with you about you, your message, and your book. So I'm going to show you this little commercial on how you too can be a part of Power of the Pen. Okay, so easy breezy, you can reach us. But also, please, if you are interested, you can email me directly at LaWanna at BradfordGroupMTG.com. You can reach both Barbara and I on Facebook. But if you do send an email, put Power of the Pen on the subject line. That's all you need. And your contact information. We will contact you and send you a form so you can fill out that says the name of your book and the overall theme of the book. And the one thing, there's only one criteria to be on Power of the Pen. The book does have to be sold on Amazon. That is the one tiny criteria. So it does have to be on Amazon. So I want to go back to what you said, Barbara, because I thought that's really powerful. And to those that are listening, again, we just have about 3 minutes before we wrap up. Well, I hope you're leaning into this. What Barbara said is, all money isn't good money. All opportunities aren't the right opportunities. So it's okay to pause, look at your list of qualifying questions. It should be a win-win. Then after you go through those questions, then you can make the best decision for yourself. And that's another thing that we give in our masterclass training is we have it's a pretty exhaustive list of what you should ask. And I'm using the word should, and I know people are like, oh, you shouldn't say should. You should ask because this is about protecting you, your investment of your time and your money in order to get the impact, influence, and income that you ultimately want. And as Barbara said, great opportunity. She's going to Miami. Barbara lives in Wisconsin. So let's start thinking about the cost. I don't know how many days is the conference?
4 days.
Okay. 4-day conference. And with paying to play. And let's say the speaker, and understand the pay to play, some people push that away. I never pay to speak. But do you pay to market yourself? Do you pay to promote yourself? So again, think about it in the big picture and ask your why. If that audience is going to give you the exposure you need, sometimes it's worth the investment. But let's just say for simple math, this 4-day conference, it was, and how much time did you get to speak?
15 minutes.
Okay. So just to give you an idea, to speak on TV for 3 minutes, it starts at $1,500 and goes up. So let's just say she gets 15 minutes and it's $500 to speak. Not too bad. But now she's got to add her travel, airfare from Wisconsin to Florida, 4 days, or let's say 3 nights, 4 days in a hotel, meals. I don't know if meals are included, and any other incidentals. So all that together, let's say it's averaging about $1,200. So from a business standpoint, again, if you're looking at your writing to be a business avenue, and this is where strategy comes in, you want to say, what does my return need to be? Because a lot of people are so excited. They're on all these stages and they're spending a lot of money traveling and playing to pay. And at the end of the year, they're like, "Oh, I made $2,000." Yeah, but you spent 10. You spent $10,000 to make 2. You're in the hole. Did you not realize that? You lost money. So
we keep it real.
And I love it. It's like, whoa, great. I love it. Want to go to, Miami. But then, okay, does it make sense right now? It may not. I know she and I have talked about how we've invested sometimes crazy money. And it's like, why do we do that? Why do we get caught up in the hype and we didn't do our due diligence and ask all the right questions, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that we need to think about. Barbara, I'm going to turn it over to you and for you to talk a little bit, and I'll be right back.
Okay. So, just to sum up that part of it, yeah, it's very important because when you are looking at, we're talking about telling your story, we're looking at, and then at that point, creating that profit, it goes together. Always look at it goes together. And like LaWanna said, strategically do that. Strategically say, okay, what stories? And I always tell you, just to give you a little side tip, keep a story file of every story in your life, anything that happened to your life. Keep that story file. That is very important because what happens is you can grab from that story file, and when you put it in your story file, you want to put what topics or what objects you learned from that story. So you have that story file, and then when it's time for you to speak, put it in a book or whatever, you have the story, you have what you learned from it, you have the secret sauce, everything together as we're talking about, knowing how to create that profit with it. And then there's your strategic part of it.
Love it, Barbara. This has been great. I apologize again that coming at you from another area, so technology may not be the best, but we wanted to come on and just give you another little training tip. What we will be doing every month with Empower the Pen, we will always have our guest authors on the platform, but we are also going to make sure that we come on and give you a little training, and stay tuned for our upcoming mini master classes as well as the master class. And with that, I want to thank you all so very much for being a part of Power of the Pen. Remember that your voice matters, your story matters. There's someone who's out there waiting to hear from you, waiting to be educated by your life story. And with that, we will see you next week at 2 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Power of the Pen. And always remember that in life and in business, when your vision intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. And as Barbara always says, remember your purpose, passion, and drive will get you to where you want to be in life. Right, Barbara?
Yes, yes.
See you next time, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.